You may not realize that I'm not part of the club. What club am I talking about? You know who they are, and they definitely know who they are. A lot of people be like, what, who? Come on, man, stop playing. They'll see.
Thank you to Satan for giving me inspiration on how to play this role.
Because we're aliens. And that's how we roll. Hulu, an evil plot to destroy the world. Enjoy.
And we just want to let you know, the New World Order has no legitimacy. And that we as the people are not afraid, and we are waking up to
And remember the sound it makes. Get ready. Kite. Yes, kite. Get ready to read this word the fast way. Get ready.
Kid.
Yes. Sound it out. Get ready.
Kid.
Sound it out. Get ready.
Kid.
What word?
Kid.
Yes, kid. Boys and girls, sound this word out. Get ready.
Steel.
What word?
Steel.
Yes, steel. Read these words the fast way. Get ready.
Play.
Yes, play. Get ready.
Must.
Yes, must. Let's read these words the fast way without making a mistake. Get ready.
Kite.
Yes, kite. Get ready.
Kick.
Yes, kick. Get ready.
Steel.
Yes, steel. Get ready.
Plane.
Yes, plane. Get ready.
Must.
Yes, must. Boys and girls, keep your reader up from under your seat. Open your book up to lesson 60 on page 153. Not enough for America's future that some participate and others don't. We have been given an extraordinary blessing, and at this moment in time, our country needs us. And we need people like George Soros, who is fearless and willing to step up when it counts. So please join me in welcoming George Soros.
It is the first time that I feel that I need to stand up and do something really and become really engaged in the electoral process.
Ladies and gentlemen, reptoids and greys, welcome to Hatestream. As the world turns, with each minute looking more chaotic than the next, what better use of our time than to blame other generations for all of our problems? Everyone thinks their generation is the best, but I'm willing to admit my bias. As a Zoomer, and one of the only few who actually knows what continent they're on, I think I can give a reasonable assessment of prior generations with no relative dog in the fight. So instead of just passing the blame before me, I'm going to rank the blame. I'll be considering values, styles, contributions, as well as how each generation responded to their environment. Now, if you don't agree with my grading, first of all, you're wrong. And second, make your own, but also tell me what generation you are. So I invented a generation. It's called the pre-greatest. They were born 1860 to 1900. This is the generation between the Civil War vets and the greatest generation. Nobody really talks about these people, so I thought it would be useful to include them. So it's following a regular grading tier, S being perfect, F being terrible, and C being just good enough to leave a better world for the next generation. So we start with the pre-greats. Now, if they were alive today, they would be 125 to 164. So these are some old motherfuckers. Some of the oldest people on camera, actually. Now, positives. Innovation in industry. The pre-greats ignited the sparks of innovation and the rhythmic march of industry. As this generation propelled humanity forward on the turbulent path of progress, the pre-greats were the first modern engineers. From the first large-scale power generators and terraformed cityscapes to radios and war machines. For better or worse, the Second Industrial Revolution was one of the most influential turning points in American history. You also have intellectual flair. A storm of intellectual fervor brewed, birthing a renaissance that dared to challenge the stagnant winds of convention and herald the arrival of new ideas. This generation included Einstein, Heidegger, Freud, Carl Jung, Rudolf Steiner, Bertrand Russell, Alfred North Whitehead, Max Planck, Niels Bohr, and Marie Curie. If you don't know those people, just think Einstein. This was a brilliant class of intellectual elites. Geopolitical chess, also mostly positive. Despite the ensuing darkness, their geopolitical maneuvers cast shadows that reached far and wide, leaving an indelible mark on the stage of global affairs. Groups like the League of Nations established the first prototypes for globalist and international organizations. Style in literature. In fashion, the pre-greatest generation embraced a blend of timeless elegance and avant-garde experimentation. The Roaring Twenties brought about the flapper style, while the later years saw the resurgence of tailored suits. Architecturally, this era witnessed the Art Deco movement, a style that combined modernist influences with intricate craftsmanship, leaving its fingerprint on the world's skylines and interiors. In literature, mavericks such as Mark Twain, Oscar Wilde, and H.G. Wells impacted writing and modern myths. But they're not without their negatives. And these guys got quite the negatives. So first we have the Federal Reserve. The creation of the Federal Reserve, clandestine entity weaving webs of financial deceit, ensnared the economy and paved the way for the impending depression, as well as debt slavery for all of the following generations. Communism. Not too pretty either. The poison of communism in this crucible, from statesmen like Lenin, Stalin, and Trotsky, spread its influence, threatening to strangle the vitality of free thought and bringing about ideological strife and humanitarian disaster. The Great Depression. The orchestrated economic collapse unfolded under the watch of the pre-greats, conducted by policies that plunged the nation into the abyss of despair and deprivation, making the super rich at the time even richer. And finally, interventionalism. The pre-greats dragged America into World War I, setting up the precedent for our role as the world police, sacrificing young men to die for the interests of the ruling class and destabilizing the developing world for over 100 years. This would also become the first generation of the CIA. So the pre-greats may have fathered the greatest generation, but the social direction they took was nothing short of disastrous. If there's any generation that's ultimately to blame for modern problems, it's the pre-greats. I give them an F, which starts us at the bottom here.
Money and the state. Governments, unlike all other organizations, do not obtain their revenue as voluntary payment for their services. Consequently, governments face an economic problem different from that of everyone else. Private individuals who want to acquire more goods and services from others must produce and sell more of what others want. Governments need only find some method of expropriating more goods without the owner's consent. One way is theft, which in a monetary economy is called taxation. But taxes are unpopular, and too much of them can spark rebellion from the public. As a result, governments discovered another way to enrich themselves: counterfeiting, creating new money out of thin air, rather than earning it through exchanging goods and services. While much has changed throughout history, government's dependence on counterfeiting goes back thousands of years. For example, in ancient Rome, emperors would shave off bits of metal from coins, or replace them entirely for inferior metal. In doing so, the government would create new coins for it to spin, at the expense of the citizens whose money was now less valuable. Governments today do not inflate the currency by cutting coins, but they continue to expand the money supply at the expense of everyone else. How? Two ways. One is by creating it directly. One consequence of using paper was that it became easier to print new money into the system. Every new dollar that the government created, not backed by any commodity, had the same effect as shaving off metal to create new coins. In today's world, it is even easier. Now that most transactions are done electronically, central banks, like the Federal Reserve, can create trillions of new dollars with a keypad. This can then be pumped through the banking system with the central bank buying assets, like government debt or mortgages, in exchange for the newly printed money. The other way is by regulating how banks can issue loans. With a fractional reserve banking system, the government can increase the money supply by changing the requirements for reserves in bank deposits. Requiring a 90% reserve means only 10% of a bank account can be loaned out. Changing that to a 10% reserve would allow for an exponential increase in the money supply, given the way money can multiply in such a system. This increase in the money supply can give the economy the appearance of increased wealth in an economy. More money means its price, also called the interest rate, or the cost of borrowing money, goes down, which means that it is cheaper to invest in a new project than an individual may believe to be profitable. Without an increase in money, this would require an increase in real savings, which would reflect a change in consumer preferences. Instead, this artificial boom leads to investments in projects and industries that would not have appeared profitable with real market prices. A short-term boom becomes a bust as there is not enough profit to justify the debt. A government that controls the money and banking systems in an economy can use it to confiscate wealth through inflation, monetize its debt, and interfere with general investment activity. It can do all of this without the brutality of police forces or militaries. How do governments achieve this power? To help understand that, let us look at the history of our Federal Reserve.
So, they put us all into the financial system, which was a big no-no. Now, we got the greats, the GOATs, greatest generation. If these motherfuckers are alive right now, they're 97 plus. And they were born 1900 to 1927, so these were in the roaring 20s, in their 20s. Positives. The greatest generation had resilience. In the crucible of war, the greatest generation exhibited unparalleled resilience, facing the storm of conflict with a tenacity that earned them a fleeting moment of greatness. It was a struggle that madeth these men. Post-war rebuilding. After the tumult of battle, they embarked on an ambitious odyssey of rebuilding, stitching the fabric of nations torn asunder and laying the groundwork for a temporary peace. The bulk of this world's modern infrastructure was designed and built by this generation. Cultural mobility. Amidst the chaos of conflict, cultural shifts echoed through their generation, paving the way for social changes, good and bad, that would influence the decades to come. In music, Greatest Generation, with its diverse musical landscape, stands as a paramount era for the evolution of music. This generation witnessed the birth and blossoming of various genres that shaped the sonic tapestry of the 20th century. From the swing era's big band sounds to the emergence of rock and roll and the advent of jazz, the musical contributions of the Greatest Generation were unparalleled. The likes of Frank Sinatra, Ella Fitzgerald, Louis Armstrong, and Elvis Presley encapsulate the richness and innovation of this musical epoch. The swing of the big bands, the soulful crooning of the vocalists, and the rebellious spirit of rock laid the foundation for the later generations to build upon. Something people don't understand about the Greatest Generation is that before them, music was either you were Mozart and you wore a blouse and a wig and played in a big theater for rich people, or it was your two cousins who knew a folk song and how to play the banjo. This was the first generation to like make popular songs. They were the first people to make hits. But they're not without their negatives. They had a Cold War hubris. Their leaders, intoxicated by post-war triumph, sowed the seeds of Cold War animosity, a geopolitical folly that still haunts subsequent generations. And this ties into the nuclear shadow, the looming threat of mutually assured destruction, born from their actions, hung like a Damoclean sword, a testament to the perilous dance of power played by their leaders. Complacency. Despite the bravado of war, a muted rebellion festered beneath the surface as complacency and conformity became the norm, stifling the potential for profound societal change, which ties into political apathy. The birth of the apolitical middle class was in this generation. Many men decided they'd rather grill in their suburban backyard after fighting 2 wars than get involved with politics or the direction of society. So, the so-called Greatest Generation indeed offered up the modern world on a platter. That serving, however, was tainted by leaders whose hubris birthed the Cold War, marred by the looming specter of mutually assured destruction. They get an A-. Look at them. These are kids, man. Next up, we got Quiet Ones. Silent Generation. If they're alive today, they are 80 to 96. Positives. Stability comes with being silent. In the aftermath of war, the Silent Generation emerged as stoic guardians, attempting to forge stability in chaotic remnants of conflict. Cultural conservatism. Embracing cultural conservatism, they whispered the echoes of tradition, preserving values in a world engulfed by change. Quiet prosperity. Beneath their social quietude, an economic prosperity unfolded, yet as a mirage concealing the storm clouds of future turmoil. Self-reliance and hard work. Silent Generation was perhaps the last generation with the majority having some type of tradecraft or survival skills. Growing up out of the Depression and World War II instilled a sense of deep self-reliance, family structure, and smart budgeting. Negatives. complacent leaders. Led by complacent figures, the silent generation became bearers of stagnation, passively observing as the currents of progress flowed around them. War pawns. Ensnared in the Cold War's web, they played the role of passive spectators again, failing to grasp the reins of ideological transformation and succumbing to the shadows of a divided world. Cultural stasis. As the world clamored for change, the silent generation's cultural contributions remained muted, an echo chamber of conformity, instead of heralding a new dawn of artistic and intellectual expression. Corruption and economic warfare. Many corrupt politicians and actors in the military-industrial complex were raised, further ignoring the interests of the people in favor of enriching themselves. These leaders would cause massive destabilization in the Middle East, Latin America, and later the West. George H.W. Bush, Joe Biden, and Nancy Pelosi are part of this generation. Silent generation. Marionettes manipulated by complacent leaders, wallows to a mediocre C tier. Generation shackled by a woeful failure to challenge the nefarious establishment encroaching. But they pass. They get a C+, which means they made the world just a little bit better for the next generation.
The draft lot.
Next up, we've got everyone's favorite, the boomers. Baby boomers. Now, if they're alive today, they're 60 plus, believe it or not. I'm getting very old. Positives for baby boomers. I know, right? An economic boom. In the wake of post-war prosperity, the baby boomers reveled in an economic boom, intoxicated by the illusion of endless plenty that masked the seeds of future discord. But they did have cultural courage. Amidst the sea of societal change, they rode the shallow waves of material success, influencing the culture with a hedonistic fervor that transformed into a wealth-driven culture, albeit one tainted by self-indulgence. I still call this a positive because I didn't have much to choose from. Technological progress. In a facade of technological progress, the baby boomers embraced a world of innovation while unwittingly paving the way for unforeseen consequences. They were also the first to be enamored with TV, sports, and modern lawn care. Blissful ignorance. Boomers maintained an almost admirable sense of delusion, despite all bad decisions of their time. Unlike many in their later generations, boomers tend to blame the younger, which means they know they had it good, but they didn't realize they wrecked it. Negatives for the baby boomers. Economic disparity. The legacy of the baby boomers is one of economic disparity. Their insatiable pursuit of material excess forging a socially divided chasm of wealth inequality. Environmental degradation. Don't think we need to expound on that too much. Cultural narcissism. The baby boomers, intoxicated by cultural narcissism, propelled society into an era of self-indulgence and superficial excess, leaving a hollow echo of hedonism reverberating through the ages. These motherfuckers think they're all that. Which is why they're vindictive tyrants and warhawks. Hillary Clinton, George W. Bush, Dick Cheney, John Bolton, Lindsey Graham, Chuck Schumer, Mitt Romney. All boomers. Need I say more? So the baby boomers were relentless architects of economic disparity and environmental degradation, which sinks them to a despicable D tier. Their insatiable pursuit of material excess and heedless consumerism forges a legacy steeped in the rot of social decay. But hey, they went to Vietnam, right?
Lottery, a live report on tonight's picking of the birth dates for the draft. Here at Selective Service Headquarters in Washington is CBS News correspondent Roger Mudd.
Good evening. It was 29 years ago that the first and most famous lottery number, 158, was drawn as the United States entered World War II. Tonight, for the first time in 27 years, the United States has again started a draft lottery. And the famous first pick tonight is September 14th, the first birthday that now is designated 001, which means for 19-year-olds born on September 14th, that beginning in January, local draft boards will induct those men born on September 14th, barring deferments. The next birthday in order, April 24th. And so on down the line this evening.
Pursuant to the executive order, the Director of Selective Service is going to establish tonight a random selection sequence for induction for 1970. I will ask Congressman Perney to come forward. Congressman Perney is representing the United States, the Military Affairs Committee of the House, and he also is a senior Republican president who has been of the watchdog committee of this selective service system. And we're going to ask him to choose the first. September 14th. September 14, 001. Mr. Paul M. Murray, Rhode Island. April 24th.
April 24 is 002.
December 30th. December 30, 003. February 14th.
February 14 is 004.
February 29th.
This evening, this has been a very systematic, almost mechanical lottery, the first really nationally televised lottery we've ever had. There's been little excitement here, but for one or two brief occasions, 4 or 5 of the Youth Advisory Council members.
You notice how old these motherfuckers are? And they were pre-greats and greatest generation that were drafting those young boomers into that war. But that's not an excuse. The greats went to war. So next up, we've got the infamous Gen X. Now, these guys are ages 44 to 59. We'll go over some positives first. Irony and humor. Amidst societal decay, Generation X emerged as navigators of nihilism, embracing irony as a shield against cultural erosion. Comic legends like Dave Chappelle, Louis C.K., Chris Rock, and Patrice O'Neal mocked social norms and hypocrisy, giving audiences new perspectives on the world they inhabited. This was partially because of their cultural detachment. In a world of cultural detachment, they exhibited an ironic ballet, a detachment from convention that, while profound, often manifested as a mere spectator sport rather than a transformative force. Technological adaptation. Gen Xers danced between the analog and digital realms, navigating the chaotic landscape of emerging virtual realities. Elon Musk, as well as the first tech startups, were Gen X. Music. Gotta give them credit. Gen X produced a unique wave of alternative rock, metal, and rap. Nirvana, Metallica, Opeth, Pac, Biggie, Nas, and Eminem, to name a few. Their irony, detachment, angst, and nostalgia opened new pathways for musical expression. Producers like Jay Dilla revolutionized beatmaking, and hip-hop pillars like Bone Thugs, Outkast, Wu-Tang, and Mobb Deep pioneered what many consider the golden age of hip-hop. Negatives for Gen X. Moral ambiguity. Generation X, ensnared in a moral ambiguity, became harbors of ethical uncertainty, navigating a world where values eroded into shades of gray. And this played into their corporate decadence. They waltzed perilously close to the edge of materialism, contributing to an era where profit often took precedence over principles. Cultural nihilism. This is a big one. As they grappled with nihilism, Generation X left behind an echo of meaninglessness, a legacy of detached irony that sometimes obscured the urgent need for social introspection. And family disintegration. Second wave feminism, the welfare state, social apathy led to a steep incline in reckless pregnancy and broken homes. If the boomers hadn't done enough damage, Gen X put this nail in the coffin, creating a permanent setback for the American family. Single-parent households increased dramatically, and divorce rates climbed at the same rate as the boomers. So Generation X, ensnared by leaders steeped in moral ambiguity, corporate decadence, and nihilism, descends into a pitiful D tier, albeit a D+, 2 grades above the boomers. This generation is just fumbling, really. But circumstantially, you have to give them a degree of benefit of the doubt.
Our generation, Generation X, we have to focus specifically on the race because anything else is genocidal, okay? If you're a black man and you gay or queer, it don't matter to us. You're still a black man, okay? Just look at us as your brother, your fathers, your mothers, and your uncles, because if blacks don't reproduce with blacks, that's genocidal. And there is a genocidal, groups out there, and it's political. That's why when you look at the LGBTQ flag, it has black and brown on it. No, y'all got to take that off. No disrespect, because black is a race, and there's no black in a rainbow, okay? And to make the color black, you need every color on the color chart except white, because white is a canvas that we paint on. And I'm using art as a metaphor because most artists want a white canvas and they start sketching with black.
All right. Next up, we got the favorite millennials. Now, these people, they're getting old, man. They're 29 to 43. This 40-year-old millennials. Positives. They had some digital connectivity. At the dawn of the digital epoch, millennials embraced connectivity, forging virtual bonds that, while superficial, hinted at the potential for a more decentralized global community. The majority of today's Silicon Valley CEOs are millennials. Social awareness, to an extent. In an echo chamber of social awareness, they championed causes, albeit as often performative gestures, displaying a taste for activism that, at times, veered into the realm of virtue signaling. Their hearts, at least, started in the right place. Cultural synthesis. Despite the disparate influences in the postmodern kaleidoscope, millennials had a knack for cultural synthesis. They mixed a myriad of references, forging a perplexing yet harmonious mosaic of influences and styles. Young independents. The earlier born millennials founded many startups and enterprises. Being the last generation to have any semblance of childhood freedom in the late 90s, they took on an aspect of independence. Negatives for millennials. Entitlement and the victim Olympics. The legacy of millennials is tainted by the entitlement epidemic, a generation often accused of cultivating narcissism, kind of like the boomers, where self-importance overshadowed collective responsibility. The 90s were relatively relaxed and in a good place concerning race relations, queer acceptance, and female independence. Somehow, the millennials found a way to make all of that worse while claiming to make it better. Digital hedonism. In the feast of digital products, millennials indulged in superficiality, fostering an era where instant gratification and curated online personas eclipsed genuine connections and real-life experiences. Similarly, millennials drove drug addiction rates to the sky and are also heavily medicated on antidepressants compared to other generations when they were the same age, revealing a preference for quick satisfaction and escapism. The first furries, cosplayers, and adult gamers were mostly millennials as well. Cancel culture. Millennials were the first modern legion of cancel culture who became the useful idiots of tyranny, where dissent and offense were deemed irredeemable sins, stifling the marketplace of ideas essential for societal progress. Millennials, unfortunately, lead most corporate HR and diversity departments. Adult conformity, in contrast to their young independence. In their later years, millennials conform just as much, if not more, than boomers or Gen X. Political platitudes, unoriginal Facebook quotes, and virtue signaling activisms are hallmarks of millennial thinking, and this moronic herd mentality is at least partially responsible for our current political landscape. So the millennials, deceived by the false prophets of Silicon Valley, plummet to an abhorrent F tier. Architects of a society teetering on the precipice of moral bankruptcy. Their legacy reverberates with the notes of societal decay.
Oh shit, sorry.
No worries. Careful with that camera though. Wait, who gave you this?
That guy who does the weather, he kept going on and on about it.
Look, don't ask anybody why, but you don't want to be eating these gummy worms. Why?
How do you grow up in the 90s and still have the nerve to
I don't know what, but
complain?
it's not good. Are you recording right now?
No.
Honestly, it's probably better if you do that. There's weird stuff happening over here.
All right. Now, we got my generation, which I already said I'm biased towards. The Zoomers, Generation Z. Now, they're getting up there too. Some people put them at ages 15 to 28. My sources went with 9 to 28. So we're pushing 30, man. But we do have some positives, as cringe as we are. So we're digital savvy. In the virtual abyss, Gen Z demonstrates a digital knack that borders on mastery, adeptly surfing the chaotic waves of the internet with a seemingly innate fluency. With many spending a formative years during the internet golden age, or the wild, wild west internet, Zoomers are meta-ironic maestros of the modem and the meme. We have a rebellious spirit and a glimmer of defiance amidst the decay. Zoomers challenge established norms with a vigor that hints at the potential for genuine revolution, making punk rock and hippies look like niche social groups. This generation so far has been almost entirely motivated by what other people hate. Humor amidst chaos. In the chaos, Generation Z wields the meme as a weapon, an anarchic laughter that defies the gravity of societal crises, offering not just a coping mechanism in the face of uncertainty, but a tool for propelling the truth in a world of lies. Older generations, celebrities, and politicians are met with firestorms of online mockery from the Zoomers that few have ever recovered from. And our unpredictability. There's one thing you can say about Zoomers: it's very hard to tell what they're going to do next. From Storm Area 51 to OK Boomer to Osama bin Laden going viral on TikTok, Zoomers are the least predictable bunch, probably as a result of informational overload combined with their rebellious irony. Generation Z may very well be the last generation capable of mounting a defense against the fall of civilization. Negatives. Attention fracture. Ensnared in the era of perpetual distraction, Zoomers often become afflicted by fractured attention, where the pursuit of constant stimuli drowns the cultivation of deep focus and genuine connection. Hyperconnectivity. Despite their digital prowess, Generation Z struggles with a facade of connection, where online interactions sometimes substitute genuine human relationships, fostering an illusion of intimacy that hides a deeper emotional disconnect. Laziness and hopelessness. Zoomers in the workforce have an extreme split, with a few hardworking individuals standing out from a sea of the laziest, most incompetent employees maybe in human history. The least likely group of Americans to ever be able to buy a home while living with the highest inflation in history. Zoomers are understandably feeling a bit hopeless for the future. Negativity and complaining. While their rebellious nature is commendable, Gen Z's tendency to criticize and complain becomes a double-edged sword, exhibiting an aspect of unpredictability that at times stifles open dialogue and accountability. So Generation Z should be celebrated for their rebellious nature. They're a generation adapting to the hellish landscape shaped by their predecessors, displaying a glimmer of potential amid the pervasive and utter destruction of this world. They get a B-. So, this is the certified list here.
So you know those dumb consultants that get hired to tell people how to manage Gen Z better? Hi, it's me. I'm Fallon, it's me. I spoke this week to a couple dozen CEOs and HR teams about how to manage Zoomers in their work. So here's what I told them to do. First is emphasize personal motivation over customer or team motivation. Baby boomers, Gen X, they used to get a lot of satisfaction out of seeing the company grow or seeing their customers do great. No, none of that. They want to know how their success is going to help their own personal growth. You could call it selfish. I think it's more accurately reflecting that companies just haven't been loyal to Zoomers with layoffs, and they're just reflecting that back on the companies themselves. Second is that Gen Z often works best in small groups of 2 to 4. And third, be prepared to talk about mental mental health a lot. Don't care how much it scares you as HR to hear the words therapy at work, but Gen Z is going to talk about it.
Now, like I said, you're more than welcome to disagree, but I think this is pretty solid. Generation Alpha. As for Generation Alpha, their fate remains shrouded in mystery. A looming question of whether they will rise above the shackles of generational failure or succumb to the pervasive darkness that envelops the epochs. But if we follow the pattern of my ranking, the generations go F, A, C, D, D, F, B. In other words, we can start to see a slow decline followed by a grand rising and then another slow fall. This is consistent with the whole weak men creating hard times law. I predict Generation Alpha will follow this trend, falling slightly to a C grade, maybe C+. It won't be anything special, but they won't be as bad as you think. Just try to keep them off the screens, please. In conclusion, every generation has its own counterculture, its own revolutionaries, its own conformists, its own nihilists. These generational labels are just rough guidelines to help identify people and cultural shifts within massive populations. Identifying your personality to your generation is as stupid as identifying with a sports team. But since we're here, boomers need to leave this earth gracefully, bestowing kindness in their final act of redemption. Be remembered as the jolly old folks who lived in a great time. Gen X should stop trying to be cool and impart some genuine wisdom from experience on the youth. We don't care about the band you had in high school. Give us a referral. Millennials need to just shut the fuck up and do their jobs. You're not a revolutionary. Your self-deprecation isn't funny and nobody likes you. Zoomers, don't make the same mistake as these bitter old assholes. Instead of blaming the older generations, look to ourselves for fault. Because those are the faults that we have the best chance of correcting ourselves. Making this world better for the next generation sounds like an empty slogan, but it is our existential duty, especially after these senile fucks get put in the ground. And with that, thank you for joining me on this fine hate stream. I love you.